Ahoy there, jabronis. Welcome to Create and Destroy. I'm your host, Dan Donnarumma. And this is episode number 13. Now, before we get into my guest, which I'm very super excited about, I do want to mention that summer has finally come to an end. And I'm so bummed about that. Summer's the best. Fall's pretty great. I do love fall. I do love going pumpkin picking, and I love getting dressed up for Halloween. But summer's so good. And fall is just a constant reminder that winter's around the corner, and winter sucks so much. But I'm trying to keep my spirits high, trying to get myself to do more stuff during the winter, be more active, so I'm not just hanging around in the house like a goddamn wiener. So hopefully I'll make that happen. Anyway, my guest for you today is Megan Charland. Megan is a very talented artist. She's a zine maker, she's a photographer, she's a collage artist, and she's also the program director for photography for a really great art center here in Rochester, New York, called Flower City Art Center. Flower City is really cool. Megan and I get into Flower City and we talk about it, but that is where I learned how to develop and process film, how to make prints from 35 millimeter film. And it's such a cool place, and I feel very fortunate that I am able to access and to utilize such a really, really cool facility and a really cool center here in Rochester. And I think it's awesome that, you know, Megan is an artist and she gets to work for this institution that really is such a wonderful community organization, you know, working to bring art to as many people as possible and making it as accessible as possible to everyone here in Rochester. And as you'll hear during mine and Megan's conversation, she's been able to surround herself with other artists, and as she mentions, that helps her with her art and her creative processes, which I think is awesome. So let's get right into it. Here's my conversation with Megan Charland. All right, Megan, how's it going?
Good.
How are you doing today?
Hot.
I know, dude. It's so hot. I was at work today and everyone was complaining about the temperature, and I just kept telling everyone we're so close to when the temperature is going to start dropping. Don't complain. Just deal with it. But it is hot as balls out right now.
It is, and it's like whenever Starbucks releases that pumpkin spice latte, it's like immediately I want it to be fall, and then I'm just so over the heat.
I'm like trying to hold out on summer as much as possible. I love pumpkin spice stuff as well, though. It's so damn good. I think it was like pushing 100 degrees today.
It was supposed to be in the high 90s.
Yeah, it was really freaking warm.
Not right for September.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about your art because you're an incredible artist. You also work at a really awesome center here in Rochester, Flower City Art Center, and I want to get into that. But before we delve into that stuff, I want to talk about the Adirondacks because you're from the Adirondacks, and I love the Adirondacks. So could you tell us where in the Adirondacks you're from?
Yeah, so I'm from town Peru, New York, which is right across the lake from Burlington. So we're right on Lake Champlain, between Plattsburgh and Saranac Lake. It's up by like Montreal, Quebec area. So very north, very north.
I was going to say, how far is that from Rochester?
Maybe 6 hours, 6.5 hours.
I don't think I've gone because that's like northeastern, right? Would it be northeastern Adirondacks?
Yes, we're at the very northeast tip.
Yeah, I haven't made it that. I've driven through that part going to like Montreal, but I've never like got to adventure and explore that part of the Adirondacks.
Yeah, we're north of Lake Placid. It's a beautiful part of the state. That's
awesome. And what brought you to Rochester?
I transferred to RIT from SUNY New Paltz, and lived here for 3 years while I was at school there. And when I graduated, I moved back. I actually moved down to New York City, and then I came back to Rochester for grad school.
And do you ever miss living in the Adirondacks?
I do, but I can't imagine actually living there as an adult. Like, it was a magical childhood, but I need more stimulation.
Every time I go to the Adirondacks, I love it, but I'm just like, how the hell do people live here, man? It's like, it's certain parts of it, man. It's like there's nothing around but mountains, lakes, and a couple of houses here and there.
Yeah, no, and there's, there's stretches of even just the Northway going up 87 that's still completely, there's no cell phone reception. You're completely in a dead zone. Like, there's no houses for miles.
And I read that you at one point wanted to become a 46er and hike all the 46 high peaks. How far into hiking that accomplishment have you gotten?
So I've only done 3 so far. My family and we have like our favorites going back, but my sisters and I, we kind of made a pact that we were going to try to work on that in the next 5 or 6 years or so.
I think it was like 2 or 3 summers ago. My wife and I are like, yeah, we're going to do it. I haven't done any of them. I haven't done a single one of them yet.
So many people I went to high school with are 46ers. Like, they've done it. Like, it's, but they stayed back there too. Like, it's hard. Also, just traveling back and forth, like having such a busy life in Rochester, it's hard to get out of the city.
Yeah. And I know, like, I have friends that have done a bunch of them, not all 46, but you can get like 2 or 3 in one go because a lot of them just connect to each other.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have no excuse not to even get one of them, which is ridiculous. So what kept you in Rochester once you moved here?
When I graduated from Visual Studies Workshop with my master's in 2013, and I actually started teaching at the College of Brockport, and I also was working at full-time at Rochester Contemporary Art Center. So I ended up getting jobs in my field, like, right out of the gate, and I had been so involved with the Rochester art scene throughout college and grad school. I kind of started to feel like home here, so I didn't really feel any type of need to leave. And then I kind of, it's the community here. I just kind of find myself staying.
Now, you also taught at SUNY Brockport, which is awesome. When did you do that?
That was, it was for 2 years. It was maybe end of 2015 to 2017.
And what was that experience like for you?
It was great. So I started out in the communications department. I taught web design and development. So I was teaching students how to create their own websites. So it was a lot of, teaching them HTML and CSS. And then an adjunct position opened up in the art department, and then I started teaching digital art and graphic design classes, which was also great. And I love teaching, and as an adjunct, like, I probably might be able to find time in my day to continue doing that now. But I never saw myself as becoming like a professor. So it wasn't something like I didn't want to grow at the university or move to another university to become like a tenure track professor. Because I do love working at like nonprofit spaces. But it was really fun teaching, and that's why I love being able to teach at the art center too.
I was going to ask, like, when you went to school, did you have intentions of teaching at a college, art?
I never did, no. And actually, I found a copy of my application to Visual Studies Workshop, because that was the only grad school I applied to. It's like, if I didn't get in there, like, I wasn't going to bother. Because again, like, they train art admins. Like, when I was there, I was the photo editor of Afterimage, because it was important for me to have that experience. I worked a lot with the director there while I was a student, and my thesis show was actually, I co-curated an exhibition at Roco, so I didn't create like my own body of work. I worked on an exhibition that was, exhibited to the public. Did you anticipate
leaving school and being able to find a job in the art industry? Because I feel like so many people go to school for art and wind up not being able to make a living or any type of career out of what they studied in or whatever type of medium they work in.
It definitely is rare. I have a lot of friends from undergrad that don't work in the field at all, but VSW trains art professionals, and we have a high percentage of alumni that end up with jobs in the field, and I just feel like that network also helped by getting the job right out of school.
It's how the world works, man. Yeah, it's who you freaking know, right?
It's all about who you know.
Yeah. And so, as I mentioned, you are an artist, and you're the program director of photography at Flower City Arts here in Rochester. How would you describe yourself to someone who's never met you before?
I wear multiple hats, so at any given time I'm working on 6, maybe 7 projects at once, which is when I thrive. I love to be busy. I work a lot with artists every day, whether or not they're 8-year-olds or 40-year-olds, 80-year-olds. I work a lot on exhibitions. I'll wear like my curator hat, or I'm doing admin work, building new programs. It's just, every day is different, which is also part of the job that I love.
So you do all these different things. Do you ever, like, at the end of the day, sit down in your house and you're just like, shit, I really need to, like, unwind here?
Pretty much every day is like that.
I'm sure, man. And so you work with photography, collage, and zines. If you only had to choose one of those moving forward, which one would it be?
I'd have to go back to zines. And I started creating zines when I was in middle school, so that's probably the longest running thing. I was doing zines before I learned the darkroom in high school, so and I love that it's this container of ideas, and really you can put anything in a zine and then share it, and that's probably my favorite part about art in general, is being able to communicate in that way.
Man, I'm such a big fan of zines. Growing up, I would go to see, punk and hardcore shows, and there was people always selling zines, and a lot of them would be art that people made. A lot of them were about punk bands. A lot of them were just like political musings or poems. There was really cool stuff. And what I always loved about them was they were super cheap and anyone could freaking make them. So, there were weirdos making stuff in zines that were just as big as weirdos as I am. And I thought that was so cool. And I've always appreciated zines, and I feel like I haven't gotten into them as much as I've gotten older, which kind of stinks. But yeah, zines are awesome. Yeah,
being a photographer yourself, you should be making photo zines.
I know. This is like something that I've been thinking about for years, that I want to make a zine, and I haven't done it. I haven't freaking done it. And overall, how long would you say you've been making art for?
Again, probably back to middle school. It was clear that I was really interested in the arts. It was really between arts and English. I really enjoyed writing too, younger. But it was in high school when I had the choice. I'm from a small town, so our art options in high school were either ceramics or photography. And at the time, I didn't like the idea of getting my hands dirty in the clay, so I took my first photography class in the darkroom and was hooked. It was one of those, you see the magic of the darkroom, and that's been my life since then.
I wish I got exposed to film photography when I was in high school. I didn't take like a really cool art class until my senior year of high school. I'm pretty sure like I didn't take any other art classes until my senior year, from probably like, let's say 6th or 7th grade until my senior year of high school. And then I did a lot. It was primarily just like painting and drawing. I wish I could have taken a photography class.
Yeah, no. And by the time, it was my senior year, I had like maybe 2 free periods and lunch, and all 3 of those you could find me in the darkroom like that. I just lived in there my senior year of high school.
So what was it like for you as you were learning like how to shoot, develop, and process film?
I had my mom's camera. That's what I started learning on. And she always had the camera around the house taking pictures of us growing up, so it wasn't weird to have the camera on me. But again, growing up in the Adirondacks, it's not like you're doing a lot of street photography. So it was a lot of walking around in the backyard. My mom, we lived on acres and acres of land, so it's just a lot of exploring and experimenting, with double exposures and ordering different types of film and playing around with different filters. It was just a lot of experimentation in the beginning.
I talked about this with a dude I interviewed just recently, Reid. He shoots 35 millimeter medium format black and white, and we were talking about developing and processing film. Like the first time I came to Flower City Arts, that was the first time I learned how to process and shoot film.
Oh wow, and I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I took the class with Mark Watts, and I remember like developing the film, thinking this was insane, and then making prints from it and just being like, this is just straight up freaking magic. Like, how did someone think to invent this process? Because this is seriously like magic shit right here.
Yeah, it was magic. I think if I'm remembering my photography history correct, the first photograph was really kind of like an accident. And it is, yeah, the magic of the darkroom. It never really goes away. We see that with our youth program. Kids now with their cell phones taking selfies on their, their iPhones, they still, I mean, they can go in the dark room and just be blown away by the process.
Yeah, it's such a freaking cool process. Do you shoot digital as well, or is it primarily analog?
The only digital I shoot is on my iPhone. All my cameras are film cameras.
And what about film drew you to it?
I like having limits. So I like that there's, I can shoot a roll of 120 in my Hasselblad and only have 12 shots. I like being able to really stop and think about those images where I'm taking. Where on my iPhone, I mean, right now, if I were to check, I probably have like over 6,000 photo files on there right now, which is insane. Because that's really where all the, they live. Some end up on social media. Very few get printed. But the intent with film, I mean, a lot of those images end up being printed because I meant for them to be made.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I think, like, for me, one of the things that I really appreciate about analog is there's such like a raw and grittiness to it that you can't replicate like the rawness of film. It's just such an awesome like feeling and an awesome aesthetic that you cannot replicate in digital.
No, you can't. And I mean, even locally, like the Kodak Camera Club, like they're constantly sharing work on their feed. And I mean, those raw scans of film, like you can see that grain and you can't duplicate that anywhere else. You really can't.
So typically, what do you like to focus on with the photography work that you do now?
I'm attracted a lot to, I don't know, like visual storytelling, but it mimics a lot of like my collage work. Like I like finding, moments that relate to each other. So I work a lot with like sequence and series and photo books because I like the way the images talk to each other. So a lot of it's very intentional.
So with your collage stuff, do you see like, are you melding your images that you're making with your photography and bringing it into your collage work as well?
I haven't done that probably since grad school, so it's probably been about 5 years. Right now they're very separate processes, but one, I mean, just the way of working ends up inspiring the next, so I feel like I don't see them being viewed together right now. What
made you want to work on collage and photography?
Collage, again, going back to middle school, like zines, like collage and zines kind of went hand in hand with me in the very beginning because that's how my zines were, a lot of them were constructed, was just cutting out images and text from magazines around the house, and that was kind of what created those first pages. And then, again, using zines for a lot of my photographic work, seeing them side by side. When I was in grad school, a lot of it ended up coming together. It was kind of like by accident.
That's so cool. How often are you making zines?
Those are pretty much weekly. I'm always doing something, whether or not they see the light of day or if they're just hidden away in a box. Like I make them regularly because it's a way to kind of like process what I'm thinking or feeling that week.
How long do they typically wind up being? How many pages?
I mean, I do a lot of the traditional 8-page zines that you fold from one piece of paper. So those are the quickest ones that I make that are just, again, kind of get the ideas out there, fold them down, and you can flip through the pages and kind of process what you just created. And then I do work digitally with a lot of zines, so they can be anywhere like from 24 pages to maybe 36 that are stitched, and those are digitally printed and bound.
So yeah, what's the process like of creating a zine from start to finish? How do you start that project and then have now an actual zine that you can hold and look through and flip through?
So this also is something where I'm kind of all over the place. It depends on, sometimes it starts with an idea, like I have an idea for the zine, like could be a thought or feeling that ends up pushing the direction of what content's being put in the zine. And other times I'm just sitting down in front of like my messy desk with all these collage pieces laying around, and then it's just like instinct, they kind of keep piling up. And then at the end it's like, oh, there's this thing. And then I kind of end up titling it based on what was just made. So it's kind of can go, in either direction.
Do you read through a lot of those? Let's say a zine you might have made a year or two ago. Will you flip through that on occasion?
Yeah, I do, especially because I do teach zine workshops at Flower City Art Center. So every time I teach the workshop, I end up bringing my personal collection of zines that I've collected from like the 60s. And then I have my own personal ones that I've made. So I always bring them both to the workshop to kind of show students examples, what a zine could look like, because they look, a lot of them, are very different.
How old are the people that you typically are teaching zine making to?
The youngest was probably 14, and then I had a woman in my last zine workshop that was in her late 60s.
So all different age groups.
Yeah, which is part of what I love about Flower City Art Center is it's all multi-generational. Like, and that's, you know, all those folks can be in the same class, and they come with all different life experiences, which is, you know, inspires a lot of ideas too. Yeah,
let's talk about Flower City. I absolutely love Flower City. As I mentioned, that was the first place I ever learned how to shoot and develop film. And so this was like 2 or 3 summers ago now. I went there and I took an intro to photography class. I remember walking in the door, sitting down for the class and being like, this is amazing. And then leaving that place feeling like I was on cloud 9. Like, this place is so awesome. The vibe of that place is great. I love that it's so welcoming. How would you describe Flower City to someone who has never been to Rochester before and doesn't know about the center and what the center does?
So we're a community art center, and we do strongly believe in art for all people. So we want to be accessible and support our community. We have 3 different departments, photography and digital art, which is the one that I'm the director of. And then we have ceramics and then printmaking and book arts. And in all 3 departments, we work with youth, adults, seniors. We have space available for our members to create. So it's not necessarily attached to a class. They could just come in and make their own work. And then we also have, every session, we offer like something like over 55 classes that artists and students can take that we offer all year round.
How many teachers are teaching classes there?
Oh, we probably easily have over 30 teachers between the 3 departments.
I'm assuming there's probably a good number of people that reach out to the center, right, to try to teach classes.
Yeah, and I'm always open for class proposals. We have our basic classes, like introductory, like the film class that you had taken. And then, we're always looking for special topics classes. So it's like those classes where, okay, the student learned how to use their camera, now what? Like, what are they going to do with that camera? So that's where we offer, like, nature photography or sports photography, the basic studio lighting class where you can learn portraiture. So we like to kind of build on that. That's where, like, the zine workshop comes in. It's like, all right, you've got images. Now what are you going to do with it?
And how long have you taught zine making at Flower City?
I've been teaching it there for 2 years.
Was that the first class that you got to teach there?
I actually taught a couple youth classes, which is funny if you know me, because I personally don't work with a lot of youth programs. I focus more on adult learning, but the kids, it was actually a great experience. And this past summer, I taught another teen class to work with the kids again, because they bring something else that it's kind of like, oh my God, I'm already in my mid-30s. I'm so detached from what they're going through right now as teens.
My sister's 16 years old, and so I'm like talking to her, and she's talking about getting ready to go back to school, and she's talking to me about college. And it's like, damn, man, that was like for me 16 years ago. Oh, where the hell has time gone? How important is it to Flower City as an organization to be this institution that is a beacon of creativity for the community here in Rochester?
Again, that's at the core of our mission. So that's in everything that we do, from programming to classes to the facilities that we have for the members. That's just at the heart of what we do.
Has the center seen a resurgence in people interested in taking classes on how to shoot analog film and how to process film?
Yes, and even just the field in general. Film's making a comeback, which is kind of amazing when, maybe 10 years ago. I know when I graduated from RIT in 2008, and everything was digital. Like, the year I transferred was the very last year that they required freshmen in the photography program to learn the darkroom. So it was like that. I was at the very end of that. And now incoming students, it's all digital. So it's great to see that, coming back, because you're going back to the basics, and it's, again, that magic of the darkroom. You can't experience that with digital.
Yeah.
And we are the only community art, the community darkroom. Like, there's no other community darkroom space in the city.
Yeah. We were talking before we started recording about Kodak, and was it last year or the year before? Because I know I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, and Star Wars was shot on Kodak film.
Yeah.
And I know there's a bunch of other directors and movies that in recent years that have been shot on Kodak film, and that.
Oh, Wonder Woman. That just came out a couple summers ago. Like, that was done on Kodak film.
Yeah, and Kodak, like their film production division finally like broke even after years and years and years of having losses. So I was like, hell yes.
Well, they're bringing Ektachrome back. I mean, who would have thought that that would have been happening? Like, it's amazing. And it's, I mean, great for us to see that interest, because that keeps us, you know, that keeps the darkroom running.
So, like you mentioned, there's really no other there's really no other community dark rooms in the city of Rochester. What about New York State? Are there any other facilities like Flower City throughout the state that you're aware of?
The closest, so Lightwork in Syracuse, they still have a community darkroom. They're affiliated with Syracuse University, so they're it's not like us where we're independent, but they still do have, because Lightwork originally started out as a community darkroom like we did back in the 70s. So so they still have that space, but yeah, not. I mean, you have to drive to Syracuse to get to another darkroom.
That's so crazy. And do you know if that facility is just like photography? Do they have any classes like zine making, ceramics, any of that sort of stuff, or is it just community
Lightwork
darkroom?
is strictly photography. They do. Actually, a couple summers ago, I took a collage workshop there. There was an artist in town. I've always really admired her work, so I kind of jumped at the opportunity to take the workshop with her. But for the most part, they focus on photo-based projects, and like they have a lighting studio there like we do. But they have an amazing state-of-the-art digital inkjet printing lab that I dream of every night, because we do not have that at Flower City Art Center.
So are there, as far as you're aware, are there any other facilities that offer the same types of classes and programs that Flower City has to offer anywhere else throughout the state?
I mean, I think we're unique that we bring these three departments together under one roof. I mean, even locally, like Memorial Art Gallery does have ceramic classes and painting classes, but the printmaking, especially the printmaking and the letterpress with ceramics and photography and the digital arts, like that's unique to us.
That's so cool. And I'm not from Rochester originally either. And one of the things when I first came to Rochester that I immediately loved about the city is it definitely has a very great art scene and an art community here. And I would say definitely Flower City has a big part in that, and probably RIT and the photography program there. But yeah, that's one of the things I love about Rochester. It's such a great art community and an art city.
Well, all of the colleges here with art programs, I mean, RIT, U of R, Brockport, Roberts, MCC, like a lot of these grads, which is impressive and a great thing to say about the city is like we're able to sustain these creative jobs and keep these grads in the city, which is, unique for us as well, I think.
Yeah, now that you mentioned MCC, I went, like, the first time I went on campus was last winter, and I was kind of walking through there, and I walked through, like, the art department section and seeing all the art on the walls and in the class. Like, whoa, this is awesome. I did not realize that, like, this was offered at MCC. That's so freaking awesome.
Yeah, Nazareth, I mean, they have an art program, too. So for all these colleges to be in one city, I mean, that's...
Can you explain what your role specifically is at Flower City? Because you are the program director of photography. So I'm assuming there's tons that goes into that. Could you explain your role and what it entails?
Yeah, so I manage our department. So I manage, we have about 16 teachers just for the photography classes. So I run... and we have about 24 to 25 photography classes that we run every session. So I'm scheduling those and developing new classes, collaborations with other organizations. This past summer, we collaborated with the George Eastman Museum and Writers and Books for youth classes. I manage our residency programs. We have an artisan residency program that I started a couple years ago, and we bring in artists from all over the country. We've had a couple from out of the country, out of country as well. And exhibitions, I curate our exhibition program in our gallery. So yeah, a lot going on. And then I have two staff in my team that the community darkroom coordinator who runs the darkroom, and then we have our youth program coordinator for like the youth program, Studio 678.
So is there anything as far as the photography department goes that you don't have your hands in, you're not involved in?
I mean, again, I have like staff to manage the dark rooms where like I'm not in there actually mixing like the chemistry myself, but I know how to in case, I had to. But yeah, no, I pretty much have my hands almost on everything. That's just, I think, the nature of working at a nonprofit art center. Yeah. Part goes back to that wearing multiple hats.
Yeah, man. So I'm like we were saying before, I'm sure there's days you're like, holy shit.
Yes.
Things are crazy. Yeah, so you started an artist in residency program at Flower City, and what was the catalyst towards making that happen?
Well, I started working there 3 years ago. I was the communications coordinator at first, and then when I ended up being offered the position of photography program manager, the ceramics department and the book arts department already had residency programs going, and I think mostly because being exposed to it at visual studies workshop, like having residents in the building and working and how that inspires students and our members, I really wanted to bring that to the photography department. So I started that as the program manager, and the first year we had 4 residents, and currently we have 2 for the year. So it's been slowly growing, and it really does have an impact on our students, and they bring in and they offer different types of classes that we might not otherwise offer, because it's not something in our wheelhouse. So it kind of also helps enhance the education program too.
And so you started there about 3 years ago?
Yes, in 2015.
And what was your role when you first started?
The communications coordinator. So I worked in the main office and did all of the promotional and marketing PR for the center.
And so you've grown to be the director of the photography program. How does that make you feel when you think like, hey, I started at this position, now I'm the freaking director of this program?
Great. Because that was also like, that's why I went to grad school. Like as much as I am an artist in my personal life, like I've always had a passion for arts administration, because I do believe strongly that we need the arts in our lives, and I like being able to support artists in what they're doing. So this was kind of the goal. The dream was to be able to manage an entire department.
Yeah, that's pretty freaking awesome, man.
Yeah, thanks.
And yeah, I love that Flower City puts on art shows. There's one every month, right, basically, or one every couple of months?
Yeah, some are 2 months long, but yeah, we have about 6 to 8 exhibitions a year.
And what goes into putting on an art show, and how many? Let me first ask you this: how many do you curate at the center?
In photography, I have about anywhere from 5 to 6 exhibitions a year, and I curate all of those.
And so what goes into curating an art show and getting it set up, and then now here comes opening day and we're letting individuals into the center?
I do have a call for work that's just open, so I do take submissions for exhibitions throughout the year. And when I'm planning our year out, like right now, exhibitions are planned through 2020. But when I look at those submissions, I'm balancing out, artists that are working in the darkroom or those working digitally, those that are more interested in portraiture or abstract, working with social justice issues, working in fine art. Because again, this really comes back to supporting our educational programs. So I like to have, a balance of exhibitions throughout the year that are going to appeal to everybody in the community at some level. And then this year we have our first juried photography exhibition, first since I've been working there, which is a national juried show that'll be going up in November. So then we put out calls for something specific as well.
What's going through your head on an opening night of a show that you've worked to curate and put together?
I hope people show up. It's usually that first hour you unlock the door and like people start walking in, and you're just sort of like looking around at the space, like waiting for it to fill. And we always have a great turnout. But it's always that first maybe 15 minutes where it's just kind of a little bit of
a waiting game, basically.
Oh, I hope so. Hope someone shows up.
And to go back to your art as an artist, and because you are so involved in art in your career as well as in your hobbies, do you ever find yourself feeling like uninspired, the malaise or lethargy that comes with, I guess, just creating?
No, I've never felt that. I'm surrounded by creatives at all times. So even if I'm in some sort of rut, I'm constantly being inspired just by those around me.
That's awesome.
And that's also where, like I said, I make zines weekly, because it's even if I'm stuck on something, I'll like force myself to sit down and make something. And usually I work out whatever block I had.
You got to give
but
me
I'm
some of that
constantly,
mojo, man.
I mean, I work at an art center. I'm constantly surrounded by creatives.
There's not even like a stretch of time where even just for like a week or so, you're like, I don't feel like making anything. You're just like, you're always putting out zines or something.
I have to. And actually, I was talking to a friend about this recently, because I'm not like religious or anything, but I feel like this is kind of like that same similar outlet. It's like you're drawn to this thing and you have to do this thing to really understand yourself, you know, like, so it's just part of my daily routine.
I got to get some of that mojo, man. There are definitely days where I'm just like, oh, I don't want to do anything. I just want to like, I don't want to think about anything that has to do with creative stuff. I just want to like lounge on the couch and watch the Yankees or play video games.
Yeah.
It's kind of ridiculous.
Well, sometimes you need to just lounge and play video games.
How critical of your work would you say you are? I know you said that you have more of aspirations of working as an art administrator, but do you find yourself at times being very critical of your work and analyzing it too much?
Oh, definitely. And I've had that problem since high school. You can ask any of my teachers or professors over the last 20 years. I've always had that problem. But again, like I need that. That's also why I love showing my work, because I love getting the honest feedback about it. Like I was one of those students in grad school that loved critique time. Like you could tear into me, and I loved that. You know, like I guess, I mean, I have a thick skin, but I also just really, I need that. Like I love that kind of, the feedback, because you learn from that. If something fails, like you do learn from those failures. And
that, see, when I was younger, I was the opposite. Like, if I experience any kind of hardship in any of my hobbies, I'd be like, all right, fuck this. I'm done with doing this. And then I realized as I got older, like, man, you got to learn from failing. Like, that's the only way you're going to get better at stuff, is just like failing and failing and failing and learning from your mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, I was raised that way too, though. We were never, you know, I mean, my mom, you learn from your mistakes. That was just something that was always kind of taught to us growing up.
If you weren't an artist, what other interests could you see yourself focusing on?
I actually, and this came up recently, because I've always been really interested in law, like media law. So if I wasn't an artist, I think I'd be a lawyer, but like an art lawyer.
I never would have guessed that at all.
Well, it's funny, when I was an undergrad, I actually took a lot of law classes, because I was kind of at that point, like, of what I wanted to do with my life. Again, I wanted to support artists. I always aced those classes. Like, the exams I would take, never got an answer wrong. And a lot of it is just like the problem solving, and I mean, there's rules. Like, there is a right answer or a wrong answer, and there was just something in my brain. I just always really excelled at that. So I was like, all right, well, if this doesn't work out, maybe I'll go to law school. And I'll fight for all those artists. Who
are some artists or individuals that have inspired you in your work?
Again, I mean, right now I'm just constantly surrounded by artists, and every single artist in residence that comes in. Right now, Megan, she's from California. She's here for an entire year. And she just works in a very different way than I do, and I just find that, you know, really inspiring, because she also works in collage, but she just approaches it in a very different way. And I find, you know, having her around the center on a daily basis and interacting with her is great. I mean, in the very beginning, like going back to like high school, like Jerry Yulsman's work was always, like, that was probably one of the first artists that I was attracted to, because it wasn't just the straight photograph. It was, you know, the piecing together of images. And I think, you know, a lot of the collage work I was doing, like, that just kind of spoke to me.
Now that you're mentioning working closely with the artists in residence, I'm just thinking, like, how much of your time do you spend in a week or in a day kind of being around the artists in residency, seeing what they're doing?
I mean, I check in with them probably once every 2 weeks, and then we have quarterly meetings where, like, we meet for 2 hours, and I see everything they've been working on. But they're around the center, so it's kind of hard to, I try to give them the space to work, because that's what they're there for, is to create. So I don't want to be like hovering and like, oh, what are you doing? That's so cool. But I am aware, you know, of what's going on all the time. But in a daily, I probably, you know, not more than 30 minutes, an hour.
Do you ever get to like collaborate with any of the artists in residence?
I don't collaborate with them while they're here, because that role, I am, you know, managing them in that sense. But I've worked with a couple of them after they've left the program, because we really just like clicked and it made sense. And So again, it's exposure to different types of people.
And are there any, I know you're putting out zines each week, but are there any specific projects that you've been working on lately?
I don't have any like bigger projects right now. It's all been really small one-off pieces. My job is taking up a lot of my time right now. I was promoted to director in January, so it's been 8 months, and I've been making a lot of changes over there. So it's kind of like my life has kind of been completely evolved around that, which is great, and I love it. That's been taking up a lot of my time right now.
After today, where can people find your work, keep up with what you're doing, and learn about Flower City and the classes that the center offers?
So you can find me online. My website is megancharland.com, and that's just MEGAN, no extra H's or N's in that. And then my social media handles are all the same, Megan Charland. And then Flower City Art Center, you can visit us at rochesterarts.org, and all our social media handles are Rochester Arts.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Megan. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me.
And there you have it, folks. That's my conversation with Megan. Super nice. We recorded this interview. It was a few weeks ago, and I've had to put the interview on the shelf for a little bit while I was taking care of some other things. And Megan and I have been working to make this interview happen. And the day that we were able to actually sit down and talk, I went to Megan's studio. It was hotter than hell that day. It was so goddamn hot. And we were in her studio, and the only way to cool down was a fan in there. So it was basically choose between either sitting in an oven or at least have some means of cooling down. So we had the fan going. There were people working in the surrounding studios making a bunch of noise. So that's kind of some of the noises that you hear during our conversation with people working and doing things. But I appreciate Megan sitting down with me and working with me to make sure we can have a conversation with both of our busy schedules, and I enjoyed my time being able to speak with her. I'll make sure to add links in the show notes to how you can follow Megan, check out her art and her work. I'll also add link in the show notes to check out Flower City Art Center. So if you're in Rochester or any of the surrounding areas and you've never checked out Flower City before, make sure to do so, because it's really a great place. As always, follow Create and Destroy on social media. So you can follow the show on Instagram, Tumblr, Facebook, all at Create and Destroy Podcast, and then Twitter at CreateDestroy_. Subscribe to the show if you can on whatever platform you're using to listen to the show. Rate us if you can. That'd be pretty sweet. All right, guys, as always, get out there, create something cool. I will see you next time.